It was supposed to be a quiet getaway, a remote shack, nestled deep in the mountains, far from the noise of the city. But as Emma stood in front of the decaying cabin, her loyal dog by her side, she realized the place had secrets buried beneath its rotting floorboards. When she stumbled upon a hidden tunnel, an ancient, eerie glow beckoned her forward, threatening to pull her into something she wasn't prepared for. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if stories like this excite you, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's episode will take you even deeper into the mystery. Emma had always sought solace in nature. The idea of getting away from the crowded streets and the hum of the city was something she'd craved for years. So when she found the listing for a remote cabin tucked deep in the mountains, she didn't hesitate. A small, weather-beaten shack, surrounded by trees, far enough from the nearest town to ensure peace but close, enough to the essentials in case of emergencies. It was perfect. Arriving at the cabin was like stepping into another world. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. As the car's engine turned off, silence settled around her, broken only by the occasional call of a bird or the rustling of leaves. Max, her golden retriever, leapt from the back seat and ran toward the cabin. He sniffed eagerly, his nose twitching as he explored the unfamiliar surroundings. Emma smiled at him, her heart light. The weight of the city was already starting to fade. The shack was old, clearly neglected for many years. The wooden planks were faded, and the roof sagged in places, but Emma had grown fond of rustic charm. She stepped onto the creaking porch and surveyed her new home for the weekend. The front door, partially ajar, seemed to invite her in, as if the cabin itself was waiting for her. She pushed it open, the hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. The interior was, much like the outside, weathered but not unwelcoming. Dust motes danced in the beams of sunlight streaming through the cracked windows. The wooden floorboards had gaps, and the furniture looked like it had been abandoned long ago, but Emma felt an odd sense of peace wash over her. She set down her backpack and Max's leash, then walked around, taking in the small details: an old fireplace, a stone mantel with chipped edges, a table that seemed like it had seen countless meals and stories told over the years. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As the wind howled outside, Emma sank into an old armchair by the window and let her eyes close for a moment, just to savor the quiet. Max curled up at her feet, already content in the peaceful solitude. But as she let herself drift into the calm, her gaze shifted toward the far corner of the room. Something about that corner felt different. It wasn't like the rest of the cabin. She stood, curiosity tugging at her. Max, sensing her movement, followed. There, partially hidden beneath a tattered rug, was a trapdoor. It looked out of place, its edges worn and uneven, the wood cracked and faded. Her fingers brushed over the wood, and a chill ran through her, though the room was warm. Why would there be a trapdoor here? What was it hiding? Max sniffed the edge, his tail wagging slowly, unsure but curious. Emma knelt down, her fingers brushing the latch, and with a faint creak, she pulled it open. The trapdoor creaked as it opened, revealing a dark, narrow staircase that descended into the unknown. The air that rushed up from below was cold and musty, carrying with it the scent of earth and something older. Emma hesitated. The cabin was old, that much was clear, but this felt different. It wasn't just part of the shack. This was something else entirely. Something hidden, something forgotten. Max barked softly, his paws skittering on the floorboards, unsure of what lay beneath. Emma placed a hand on his head, reassuring him. She had always trusted her instincts, and something told her that whatever was down there wasn't dangerous, just mysterious. Maybe it was the perfect way to make this weekend unforgettable. With a deep breath, she grabbed her flashlight from her bag, flicked it on, and descended into the darkness. The wooden steps groaned under her weight as she slowly made her way down. The tunnel was narrow, its walls lined with damp stone, and the air grew colder as she moved deeper. Max followed closely, his breathing loud in the silence. The further she descended, the more the walls seemed to close in on her, and she wondered how long this tunnel had been here. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, Emma paused, scanning the area with her flashlight. The beam bounced off stone walls and a floor of hard-packed earth. The tunnel stretched ahead of her, curving slightly to the left. But what caught her attention wasn't the tunnel itself. It was the soft, eerie glow coming from farther within. She squinted, unsure whether it was a trick of the light or something more. Max tugged at the leash, his tail stiff, his posture tense. Emma knelt down to calm him, but her curiosity pushed her forward. Slowly, she moved toward the light, each step muffled by the thick earth beneath her feet. As she drew closer, the glow became more defined. It wasn't just light, it was the soft, pulsing glow of something ancient, something that didn't belong in a mountain cabin. Her heart beat faster as she reached the source of the light. Embedded into the far wall of the tunnel was a large stone, its surface shimmering with a faint, golden hue. The light pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, as if the stone were alive. Emma reached out, drawn to it, her fingers brushing against the smooth surface. The moment her hand made contact, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls of the tunnel, as if the stone had awakened after centuries of silence. Max barked once, more, a nervous yelp, and Emma recoiled, her heart racing. What had she just uncovered? The glow from the stone intensified, and the tunnel around her seemed to shift, as if the mountain itself were coming alive. Emma stood frozen, the weight of the discovery pressing on her. She had no idea what lay ahead, but she knew one thing. She had just stumbled upon something far more extraordinary than she could ever have imagined. Emma's hand trembled as it hovered over the glowing stone. It was warm to the touch, almost like it had been alive in a way that felt as ancient as the mountains themselves. Her flashlight flickered as if reacting to the pulsing light, casting erratic shadows across the tunnel walls. Max whined softly, his fur standing on end, and Emma instinctively tightened her grip on the leash, pulling him closer. The atmosphere had shifted, heavy with an unseen presence, as if the earth itself was watching. She withdrew her hand slowly, as though the stone might bite if she wasn't careful. The hum that filled the air grew louder, vibrating through her chest, a low rumble that seemed to echo in her bones. There was no logical explanation for any of this. Her rational mind screamed to leave, to get back to the safety of the cabin, where she could pretend this was just some bizarre accident, a trick of light and shadow. But her curiosity, it was too strong. Something inside her refused to let go. She had come here seeking solitude, a break from the chaos of her life. But she hadn't expected this discovery, this mystery. What could this stone be? How had it ended up buried beneath the shack? As she took a step back, the stone's glow dimmed for a moment, then flared brighter, as if it sensed her withdrawal. The hum vibrated through the floor, rattling the stones at her feet. Her heart raced, a mixture of fear and wonder overwhelming her senses. She had to know more. She had to uncover what had been hidden for so long. Emma took a deep breath and crouched down to examine the stone more closely. It wasn't just a rock, it was carved, smooth, and circular, with intricate symbols etched into its surface. The symbols seemed to swirl around the stone, almost as if they were moving, shifting under her gaze. They weren't from any language Emma recognized. This wasn't anything she could explain, not with her limited knowledge of history, nor with her understanding of the world. Max tugged at the leash again, growling low in his throat. Emma looked up at him, feeling a chill creep up her spine. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. But he wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the far end of the tunnel, where the faint light seemed to bend and twist, growing brighter. Suddenly, Emma heard a sound, a whisper, like wind rustling through old leaves. It came from deep within the tunnel, far beyond where the light should have reached. Her heart skipped a beat. Was someone else down here? Or was it just the mountain speaking? Max barked loudly, startling Emma, and the light from the stone flared one last time, before it flickered out completely, plunging the tunnel into darkness. The darkness in the tunnel felt suffocating, pressing against her from all sides. Emma's breath came fast and shallow as she fumbled for her flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness. Max's bark echoed off the walls, his eyes wide with panic. She could feel his fear, his unease, like a tangible presence in the air. "Easy, boy," Emma whispered, her voice shaky as she adjusted the beam. She tried to steady her nerves. There had to be a logical explanation for this, she told herself. The light could have been a reflection or some natural phenomenon. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. There was something ancient here, something beyond her understanding. She slowly backed away from the stone, her hand brushing along the rough tunnel wall for guidance. The vibrations from the stone had ceased, but the air was still thick with the lingering hum, as though something powerful had just been awakened. As Emma made her way toward the stairs, she noticed something strange. The tunnel's entrance was no longer where she'd left it. The wooden trapdoor, which had been resting loosely above her, now seemed almost sealed. The ground beneath her feet had shifted slightly, as though the tunnel was alive, adjusting, moving in response to her actions. She paused, looking at the spot where the door should have been. The wood now seemed to be part of the earth itself, the edges of the opening blending seamlessly into the dirt. A sudden realization hit her. There was no turning back. The tunnel was meant to be found. She wasn't just here by accident. This had been waiting for her. Max whimpered again, tugging at the leash, his instincts screaming at him to flee. Emma's gaze flickered to the distance, where the eerie light had returned, now stronger than before, shining through the curves of the tunnel like a beacon. The stone had somehow called to her, and she couldn't explain why. Something deep inside her whispered that this wasn't just some hidden treasure, it was a doorway, a passage to something far more important than she could imagine. With a final glance back at the now invisible entrance, Emma made a decision. She had come this far, and there was no way she was turning back now. The unknown was ahead, and though it scared her, a strange pull urged her forward. The stone wasn't just a relic, it was a key, and the answers were somewhere ahead. With Max at her side, Emma stepped forward, the walls of the tunnel narrowing as the light grew stronger, guiding her deeper into the mountain. What she would find, she didn't know. But one thing was certain: she wasn't alone in this discovery. And whatever lay ahead, it was something ancient, something lost, waiting to be unearthed. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, its walls narrowing as Emma and Max ventured deeper. The air grew colder, the hum of the stone in the background like the pulse of some ancient heart. Max's steps were hesitant, his golden fur bristling with tension. Emma kept her hand lightly on his back, offering what comfort she could, though she felt the same unease swirling in her chest. Each step forward felt like a step into the unknown, a path she couldn't turn back from. The light ahead grew brighter, and Emma squinted into the glow. It wasn't harsh, not like a flashlight or a lantern, but gentle, almost welcoming, like the soft, constant warmth of the sun on a spring day. As she moved closer, she saw that the tunnel opened up into a larger space, the walls of which seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The faint glow was coming from the floor itself, as though the very earth was alive. Max growled low, his tail stiff, but Emma ignored it. She had to know what lay ahead. The tunnel opened into what could only be described as a chamber, though the word didn't seem quite right. The ceiling was high, stretching far beyond her line of sight, and the walls were made of rough-hewn stone, dark and jagged. At the center of the room, an enormous stone altar stood, ancient carvings etched deep into its surface. The glow seemed to emanate from it, and as Emma stepped closer, she felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, and Emma froze, heart pounding. For a moment, she wondered if it was the stone again. But then she realized it was something else. Something alive. Max barked again, his voice sharp and urgent, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. She could feel it now, a presence, something watching her from the shadows. Her eyes scanned the chamber, but all she saw were the stone walls and the altar in the center. And yet, she knew she wasn't alone. As her gaze shifted back to the altar, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the faint light. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the form. A man tall, with long dark hair, his features sharp and almost ethereal. He was dressed in tattered robes, his expression unreadable, but his presence was undeniable. He looked at her as though he had been waiting for her. "You've come." His voice was low, almost a whisper, but it echoed in the chamber like thunder. Emma's heart raced. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling, the question escaping her before she could stop it. The man smiled, though it was not a warm smile. It was knowing, as though he understood something she couldn't yet grasp. "I am one of the guardians of this place," he said, "and you are the one who has awakened it." The man's words hung in the air like a weight Emma couldn't shake. Her pulse quickened as she tried to make sense of what he had said. One of the guardians of this place. What did that even mean? Who was he? And how had he come to be here, in this forgotten chamber beneath the mountain? Max growled low, his hackles raised as he circled around Emma. The presence of this man seemed to unsettle him as much as it did her. Emma took a step back, but the man didn't move. His eyes dark, almost black, locked onto hers, and for a moment, she felt like he could see right through her. "I don't understand," she managed, her voice shaky. "What is this place? And who are you?" The man's expression softened slightly, though there was still an air of mystery about him. "You've stumbled upon something much older than you realize," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made her feel like she was standing on the edge of something vast, something unimaginable. "This place has been hidden for centuries. A secret kept buried beneath the earth. It was not meant to be found." Emma glanced around the chamber, her eyes taking in the strange symbols carved into the walls and the glowing altar that seemed to pulse with an ancient energy. The air was thick with it, and she could feel the energy around her alive, almost like the mountain itself was breathing. "Why was it hidden?" she asked, stepping closer despite the unease gnawing at her. She had to know. She had to understand what was happening. The man's gaze flickered to the altar, then back to Emma. "Because it is dangerous," he said, his voice heavy with warning. "The stone you touched. It is more than just a relic. It is a key to something that should never be awakened. And now that it has been, there are those who will come for it." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Those who will come for it? She glanced over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear out of the shadows, but the chamber remained empty. "Who?" she demanded, though her voice wavered with the fear she felt rising inside her. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate, like a man who had seen centuries pass. "There are forces that seek the power of the stone," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And they will stop at nothing to claim it." Emma's mind raced. She had come here to escape, to find peace, to disconnect, but now she had found something much larger, something more dangerous than she could ever have imagined, and it was clear that her discovery had set something in motion. "Why me?" she whispered, the question hanging in the air between them. The man's eyes darkened, and he stepped closer, his presence filling the room. "Because you are the one who has awoken it," he said softly. "And now you must decide. Will you protect it, or will you let it fall into the wrong hands?" Emma's mind spun with possibilities. There was no turning back now. The choice had already been made, and somehow, she was a part of it. The stone's glow pulsed stronger, and the chamber seemed to close in around her. She wasn't just here by accident. She was a part of something much bigger. Emma's mind raced as the man's words hung in the air. "You must decide. Will you protect it, or will you let it fall into the wrong hands?" Her heart pounded in her chest. The weight of the decision he spoke of felt heavy, suffocating even. There was no warning. No time to process what was happening, just the cold reality that she was in the middle of something far bigger than herself. The stone, the tunnel, the guardians, all of it. She glanced at Max, who stood by her side, his body tense and his gaze fixed on the man. Her loyal dog, who had been by her side through everything, seemed as unsettled as she felt. It was as though the very air in this chamber had shifted, becoming thicker, darker, and heavier. She could almost feel the mountain holding its breath, waiting for her answer. "What happens if I don't protect it?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper, though the words tasted bitter on her tongue. She already knew the answer. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach. The uncertainty, the fear, it all seemed to be building, pulling her deeper into a web she didn't fully understand. The man didn't flinch at her question. His eyes remained steady, unwavering. "The stone is a key, and there are those who would use it to open doors that should remain closed." He stepped closer to the altar, his eyes never leaving hers. "Once the stone is awakened, its power is unleashed. It cannot be controlled. It will consume everything in its path unless it is protected." Emma swallowed hard, her throat dry. "What power?" she asked, her voice shaking now, a mixture of disbelief and desperation in her tone. She needed to understand. She needed some explanation, some clarity. The man's eyes seemed to grow darker, the air around them thickening. "The power to manipulate time itself," he said softly. "To bend reality, to alter the course of history. There are those who would use it to change the past, to rewrite the future. And there are those who would destroy it, erase it from existence, no matter the cost." Emma's mind reeled. Time, history. She could barely grasp what he was saying, and yet she knew he wasn't lying. His words felt too real, too dangerous. A cold shiver ran down her spine. "And if I decide to protect it?" she asked, even though she wasn't sure she could handle what that would mean. "You must guard the stone with your life," the man replied, his voice steady but laced with a sense of finality. "You must never let it fall into the wrong hands, because the consequences would be catastrophic." The silence that followed was thick with tension. The hum from the stone seemed to pulse louder now, almost like a heartbeat, a steady reminder that she had no choice but to make a decision. But how could she? She wasn't a guardian. She was just a woman looking for peace. Her thoughts spiraled, but deep down, she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't just walk away. Whatever this stone was, whatever it represented, she was now part of it. She had awakened it, and with that, the responsibility was hers. She took a deep breath and nodded, a slow, steady motion. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing: she would protect it. The moment Emma made her decision, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted. The hum from the stone grew louder, more intense, as if the very earth beneath her feet was responding to her words. Max whined softly beside her, his fur bristling as he backed away. The light from the stone pulsed brighter, filling the chamber with an eerie glow that seemed to seep into every crack and crevice. The man watched her with an unreadable expression, though Emma could feel the weight of his gaze. For the first time, he seemed to approve of her choice, but the gravity of her decision settled heavy in her chest. She wasn't just protecting a relic, she was standing guard over something far more dangerous. The power to manipulate time itself, to rewrite history. The implications of that knowledge felt almost too vast to comprehend. "You have made the right choice," the man said, his voice low and almost reverent. "But the road ahead will not be easy. There are those who will come for the stone, and they will stop at nothing to take it from you." Emma's stomach tightened. "Who are these people?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rising panic in her chest. "They are called the Seekers," the man replied, his eyes narrowing. "They are an ancient order, born from those who believe they can control time. They seek the stone because they believe it holds the power to change the very fabric of reality. They would use it to rewrite the past, to undo their mistakes, to alter the future. But the stone cannot be controlled. It was never meant to be." Emma's heart raced. Seekers. She had never heard of them, but their name alone sent a shiver down her spine. Ancient order. Control time. The weight of it was staggering. She could feel the tension in the air, like a storm was building on the horizon. The calm before the chaos. "They will come for the stone," the man continued, "and they will do whatever it takes to claim it. You must be ready. There are forces at work, forces older than this mountain itself, and they are not easily deterred." "Ready?" Emma repeated, her voice thick with uncertainty. "How am I supposed to protect it? What do I do?" The man's gaze softened, a hint of sorrow in his eyes. "You cannot do it alone. You will need allies, people who understand the importance of what you've found. And you must keep the stone hidden. It must never fall into the wrong hands." Emma nodded, though her mind was still spinning. Allies. She had no idea who she could trust. She had come here to escape, to find some peace, not to fight a war she didn't understand. Max tugged at the leash again, his growl growing louder, and Emma turned her head, her eyes scanning the shadows of the chamber. Something was stirring in the darkness, something just beyond the reach of the light. The storm was rising, and she had no choice but to face it. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air was heavy, thick with the tension of unspoken threats, as if the very mountain had sensed the shift in the energy around them. Max growled low, his fur bristling, and Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't tell if it was the power of the stone or the uncertainty of what lay ahead, but something in the depths of the tunnel seemed to pulse, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. The man who had called himself a guardian watched her intently, his expression unreadable. "You must leave this place," he said urgently, his voice low, almost a whisper. "The Seekers are already on their way. It won't be long before they find you." "Find me?" Emma repeated, her voice thick with disbelief. She had no idea who these Seekers were, but the man's words left no room for doubt. The danger was real. "They will stop at nothing to take the stone from you," the man continued, his eyes narrowing. "Their power is formidable, and they've spent centuries searching for it. You are the key now, Emma. They will track you, and they will try to break you." The weight of his words pressed down on her, but she couldn't help but ask, "How do I stop them?" The man's gaze softened, his face now etched with weariness. "You cannot fight them alone," he said quietly. "You must seek allies. You must trust those who understand the power of the stone, those who have fought against the Seekers before." Emma's mind raced. She had no allies. No one she could turn to who would understand any of this. She had come here seeking solitude, a quiet escape from the chaos of her life, and now she was standing in the heart of something far darker, far more dangerous. "Where do I go?" she asked, her voice trembling. The man stepped closer, his face a mere shadow in the dim light of the chamber. "There are places hidden within these mountains," he said. "Old sanctuaries. Places where you can find refuge, where you can learn to protect yourself. But you must leave now. They are closer than you realize." Before Emma could respond, a distant sound echoed through the chamber footsteps, slow and deliberate, growing louder with each passing second. Her heart skipped a beat. They were here. The Seekers had arrived. Max barked sharply, and Emma instinctively moved closer to the stone, her body tense. The glow from the stone pulsed brighter, as if reacting to the threat, its light filling the chamber with an eerie warmth. "They found us," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. The man's eyes flickered with something that almost looked like fear. "Run," he said, his voice urgent. "You must protect the stone. Don't let them take it. Trust no one, Emma." With those final words, the man vanished into the shadows, leaving Emma alone in the chamber, the pulsing stone her only light. She hesitated for a moment, the reality of the situation crashing down around her. There was no time left. The Seekers were coming, and she had no choice but to run. Emma didn't wait another second. Her breath came in sharp gasps as she turned and bolted toward the tunnel, Max at her heels, his claws scraping against the stone floor. The chamber, once so serene and mysterious, now felt like a trap, closing in around her with every step. The low rumble of distant footsteps echoed behind her, and she knew the Seekers were coming. There was no time to think, no time to question what she had gotten herself into. She had to get out, and fast. The glow from the stone seemed to dim as she moved away, the tunnel growing darker with each passing second. Max barked, his pace quickening, and Emma gripped the flashlight in her hand, the beam bouncing erratically across the narrow path. Every turn, every twist in the tunnel felt unfamiliar, like the mountain itself was shifting, closing off her escape route. She reached the stairs, the wooden trapdoor at the top now completely sealed, as if the mountain was trying to keep her trapped below. Panic surged through her. No, she couldn't be stuck. She couldn't let them catch her. Desperately, she searched for another way out. She ran her hand along the stone wall, feeling for any irregularities. There had to be a way. There had to be a way out. Max growled again, louder this time, and Emma's eyes widened as she followed his gaze. At the far end of the tunnel, barely visible in the dim light, was a narrow crack in the wall. It was almost hidden by the natural formations of the stone, but there it was just wide enough to squeeze through. Without thinking, Emma sprinted toward the crack, her heart pounding in her chest. The footsteps grew louder behind her, closer, but she couldn't stop. Not now, not when she was this close. She dropped to her knees and pushed through the narrow opening, feeling the rough edges of the stone scrape her skin as she wedged herself through. Max followed, his body slipping through with ease, and they emerged into a hidden passage on the other side. The air in the passageway was colder, and the smell of damp earth filled her nostrils. Emma couldn't see much, but she could feel the presence of something old, something forgotten. The walls here were smoother, almost polished, and the faint sound of water dripping echoed through the darkness. She paused, trying to calm her breathing, her heart still racing in her chest. This passage, whatever it was, felt different from the rest of the mountain. It wasn't just an escape, it was a path, a hidden route that had been waiting for someone to find it. Max sniffed the air, his body tense, and Emma followed his lead. She had no idea where this passage would lead, but she knew one thing: it was her only chance. She moved forward, her flashlight cutting through the darkness, the weight of the Seeker's pursuit pressing heavily on her shoulders. Whatever lay ahead, she had to keep moving. There was no turning back now. Emma moved swiftly through the hidden passage, her pulse still racing from the urgency of her escape. The narrow tunnel stretched before her, winding deeper into the heart of the mountain. She tried not to think about the seekers closing in behind her, the weight of their pursuit pressing on her chest like a vice. Max trotted by her side, his ears perked, his every step alert to the faintest sound in the darkness. The crack in the stone behind them had sealed itself, leaving no sign of the path she'd just traversed. The air grew colder as she descended, the sharp chill biting at her skin and making her breath visible in the dim light. The passage itself seemed ancient, a forgotten vein, running through the very bones of the earth. The walls were smooth, almost unnaturally so, with strange markings etched into them that Emma couldn't fully decipher. They were like symbols, like the ones she had seen on the stone in the chamber, but these seemed older, worn by time. Max paused in front of her, his nose twitching. He seemed to sense something she couldn't, and Emma instinctively followed his lead. The tunnel curved sharply ahead, and just as she thought she couldn't go any further, she saw it. The end of the passage opened up into a vast, vaulted space. Emma stopped, wide-eyed. Before her lay a sanctuary, a hidden chamber so grand and untouched that it seemed almost unreal. The chamber ceiling soared above her, its height staggering. Massive stone columns, carved with more of those cryptic symbols, stretched upwards, supporting the weight of the mountain itself. At the center of the room stood an altar. Not unlike the one in the chamber above, but this one was different, older, as though it had been here for millennia, waiting for someone to find it. It was adorned with a series of intricate carvings, some of which seemed to shift and change as she looked at them. The stone beneath her feet was smooth, worn down by countless years of existence, and the air felt charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. As she stepped forward, she noticed something strange. On the altar lay a book, ancient and weathered, its pages yellowed with age. It wasn't the book that caught her attention, though it was the light emanating from it, a soft, almost imperceptible glow. Max sniffed the air, his growl low and steady. Emma moved toward the altar cautiously, her fingers brushing the surface of the stone. She could feel the energy of the room around her, as if the walls themselves were alive, watching her every move. The book seemed to call to her, its presence almost magnetic. She reached for it, but as her hand hovered over the pages, the air shifted. The temperature dropped even further, and the faint sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat. The seekers weren't far behind. She snatched the book from the altar, clutching it to her chest. The glow from the stone pulsed once more, brighter this time, and the symbols on the columns flickered like living shadows. Max barked once more, snapping Emma out of her daze. She turned, eyes wide with fear, and saw the entrance to the sanctuary, a narrow, hidden passage leading further into the depths of the mountain. There was no time left. She had to go. Emma sprinted down the narrow passage, Max at her heels, the book clutched tightly to her chest. The sanctuary had provided a brief moment of respite, but it was clear now that the seekers were closing in. She could hear their footsteps, distant but growing louder with every second. The mountain seemed to hum with an energy she couldn't comprehend, its walls alive with ancient power. It was as if the very stone itself was watching her, waiting. The passage twisted and turned, and Emma felt as if she were running through the veins of the earth itself. The light from her flashlight flickered, casting long shadows that danced along the walls, making her feel like she was being followed by something far older and more powerful than she could understand. The book felt heavy in her hands, its presence both a burden and a guide. She had no idea what it contained, but she could sense its importance, the way it seemed to pulse with energy, as if it held the secrets to everything she had uncovered so far. The seekers wanted it. She knew that much. But why? What did it have to do with the stone, and why had it been hidden beneath the mountain for so long? Max barked suddenly, breaking her thoughts, and Emma looked ahead. The passage opened up again, revealing another hidden chamber, smaller than the last but equally as imposing. The walls were covered in more marking symbols that seemed to shift and writhe, almost as if they were alive. A cold wind swept through the room, and Emma shivered, her breath visible in the air. The room felt like it had been abandoned, forgotten by time, and yet it was still filled with an unsettling energy. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and atop it rested a stone that shimmered with a light similar to the one from the altar. It was smaller than the first, but just as powerful. Emma approached it cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the pull, the way the stone seemed to call to her. It was almost as if it was meant to be in her hands, but before she could touch it, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and commanding. "Stop." Emma froze, her body tense as she turned toward the sound. From the shadows, figures emerged cloaked in dark robes, their faces obscured. The Seekers. Their leader stepped forward, his eyes glowing with a cold, unnatural light. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "This stone belongs to us." Emma's grip on the book tightened. She couldn't let them take it, not now, not after everything. She had come too far. The Seekers advanced, but Emma didn't move. She couldn't. Her mind raced, trying to come up with a plan, anything to escape them. But the chamber felt like a trap, the walls closing in with every step they took. She had to fight. Emma stood in the center of the chamber, heart hammering in her chest as the Seekers slowly advanced toward her. Their eyes gleamed in the dim light, the cold, unfeeling gaze of predators closing in on their prey. The stone on the pedestal shimmered in the center of the room, its glow intensifying with each passing second, as though it sensed the danger surrounding them. Max, at her side, growled softly, his fur bristling. But Emma kept her eyes fixed on the Seekers, not daring to look away. The leader, cloaked in darkness, stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of calm. "You don't understand what you've found," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "This stone, this power, it's not meant for someone like you." Emma swallowed hard. "And who is it meant for, then?" she demanded, her voice shaky but strong. "You. You think you can control it? Bend time? Rewrite history? What makes you think you're worthy?" The leader's smile was cold, almost sad. "I have no intention of controlling it. We only seek to ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. It's not about worthiness. It's about survival." "Survival?" Emma repeated, confused. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer, his cloak sweeping around him like the night itself. "This power is not something that can be controlled by one person, Emma. It was never meant to be. It's a force of nature, and if it's left unchecked, it will consume everything in its path. The destruction of time itself, the force of nature, unraveling of reality, these are the consequences of using the stone for personal gain. That is why we must protect it." Emma felt a chill run through her. She had always known there was something more to this, something dangerous hidden within the stone. But hearing it from him, seeing the certainty in his eyes, made her blood run cold. But there was something else, too. A flicker of doubt, a gnawing feeling in her gut that told her not everything was as it seemed. "I'm not the one who's going to destroy anything," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I don't want this power. I don't want any of it." The Seekers paused, their leader's eyes narrowing as he studied her. Emma could feel the weight of their gaze on her, their expectations pressing down like a physical force. The air in the room seemed to tighten, the space between them charged with energy. "Then why do you have the book?" the leader asked, his voice hardening. "Why do you hold the key to everything?" Emma glanced down at the book clutched in her hands. She didn't know why. All she knew was that it had called to her, that it held answers she couldn't understand. But now, faced with the Seekers, the truth was clear. It wasn't about the book, or the stone. It was about what she chose to do with the power she had unwittingly unlocked. "I don't want to control anything," Emma said softly. "I just want to stop it from destroying everything. I'll protect it. But I won't let anyone use it for their own gain." The leader's gaze softened for a moment, but his eyes were still filled with cold resolve. "Then you must understand that you can't do this alone. The Seekers will come for you. And if you don't join us, if you don't let us help you, you will fail." Max growled again, his body tense, and Emma could feel the weight of her decision pressing on her chest. She had no choice. She had to protect the stone, but at what cost? The room was silent, the tension palpable. It was clear that this was the moment, the choice she had to make. Emma stood frozen, the weight of the leader's words sinking in like stones in her stomach. "The Seekers will come for you, and if you don't join us, you will fail." Her mind whirled, but she couldn't escape the stark reality of the situation. She had always been someone who preferred to run, to hide from confrontation, but now, with the weight of the stone and the book in her hands, there was no turning back. She had awakened something powerful, something ancient, and now she had to face the consequences. She couldn't afford to fail. Not when the stakes were so high. The leader's gaze was unwavering, a mix of pity and resolve in his eyes. You must understand, Emma, the choice you make now will affect everything. You think you can protect it on your own, but the forces you're up against are beyond your understanding. Even with the stone, you cannot fight them alone. Emma's grip on the book tightened, her knuckles turning white. The glow from the stone still pulsed softly behind her, as if urging her to act. The Seekers were right. She couldn't protect it by herself. The mountain, the stone, the power, it was all too much for one person to handle. She needed help. But who could she trust? I don't know who to trust, she whispered, her voice barely audible. How can I know that you're telling me the truth? How do I know you're not just another force trying to control it? The leader didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a step closer, his eyes studying her with a piercing intensity. Because I've seen what happens when the wrong hands get hold of the stone. I've lived through it, and I know the price of failure. His words echoed in her mind, and she felt the weight of his experience, the sorrow behind his voice. He wasn't just some power-hungry figure. He was someone who understood the cost of what they were, dealing with the price of tampering with the very fabric of time and reality. I can't do this alone, she admitted, the words heavy with the realization that she was in over her head. I need your help. The leader nodded, a silent acknowledgement that they were on the same page. But his eyes remained hard, his resolve unshaken. You must make the right choice, Emma. Time is running out. As if on cue, the ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble shaking the chamber. The Seekers moved into position, ready for whatever came next, and Emma could feel the tension in the air. The decision had been made. She had chosen. But now, the real test began. Max barked loudly, his body bristling with anticipation. Emma glanced at the leader, her heart racing. Let's move, he said, his voice steady. We protect the stone, or we lose everything. Emma nodded, stepping forward into the unknown, the weight of the stone heavy in her hands. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it. The tremors beneath Emma's feet grew stronger, the very mountain seeming to shake in anticipation of the coming battle. The Seekers moved swiftly, their cloaks billowing behind them like shadows as they prepared for whatever was to come. The leader, standing by her side, motioned for her to follow. The tension in the chamber was palpable, every breath heavy with the knowledge that their time was running out. Max stood beside Emma, his body tense, his eyes locked on the doorway leading out of the chamber. He could sense the danger, and so could she. She had no illusions now. This wasn't just about protecting the stone, it was about survival. If the Seekers were right, if they didn't stop the stone's power from being unleashed, it could tear apart everything: time, history, reality itself. We don't have much time, the leader said, his voice low and urgent. The Seekers will not hesitate to take what they want. We have to move quickly. Emma nodded, her fingers tightening around the book. She had made the decision to protect the stone, but now, in this moment, she wasn't sure what that would mean. She had no answers, only the overwhelming sense that the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. She wasn't just protecting the stone, she was protecting the future. They moved swiftly through the corridors of the mountain, the light from the stone flickering behind them. Max growled low, his eyes scanning the darkness. They reached an ancient archway, carved with the same cryptic symbols Emma had seen before. The leader stepped forward and placed his hand on the stone door, whispering something under his breath. The archway groaned, and the door slowly began to open, revealing a chamber filled with shadows. This is the heart of the mountain, the leader said, his voice reverberating in the silence. It is here that the stone's true power lies. And it is here that the Seekers will try to take it. As they entered the chamber, the air grew colder, the energy thick with anticipation. In the center of the room stood another altar, the stone glowing brighter than ever. The Seekers were already here, their leader standing at the far side, his eyes gleaming with dark purpose. He stepped forward, his voice echoing in the chamber. It's over, Emma, the Seeker leader said, his tone triumphant. You cannot stop what's already begun. The stone belongs to us. Emma stood firm, her heart racing. No. I will protect it with my life. This power is too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. The Seeker leader smirked. You can't stop us. We've already won. Before Emma could respond, The room erupted in a surge of light. The stone's power surged, the air crackling with energy. The Seekers lunged forward, but Emma held her ground. She knew this was it, the final confrontation. It was now or never. Max barked fiercely, lunging at the Seekers, distracting them just long enough for Emma to make her move. She sprinted toward the altar, the book pulsing with power in her hands. The light from the stone grew brighter, blinding, and for a moment, Emma felt the weight of the universe pressing down on her. She was the key now. She was the one who could protect or destroy. She thrust the book into the stone, and the light exploded outward, engulfing the chamber in a brilliant flash. When the light faded, Emma stood alone in the center of the chamber, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The altar was empty. The Seekers were gone. The mountain had fallen silent, as if holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Max stood by her side, panting, his fur singed from the intense energy. Emma looked around, disbelief settling in her chest. The stone had vanished, its power now sealed within the book. She could feel the weight of it in her hands, heavy, but not oppressive. It was as though the energy had shifted, transformed into something that could be contained, something that no longer threatened to consume the world. The leader of the Seekers was nowhere to be seen. Emma had no idea what had happened to him, but for now, the danger had passed. She had done it. She had protected the stone. She had stopped the Seekers from unleashing its power. But the victory felt hollow, as if the cost of this battle was still yet to be fully understood. Max whined softly, nudging her leg, and Emma sank to her knees, exhausted. The weight of everything, the stone, the Seekers, the book, felt like a burden she would never fully understand. She had been part of something far greater than herself, and though the danger had passed for now, she knew the story wasn't over. Not really. The stone was still out there, its power sealed for the moment, but the forces that sought it would never truly disappear, and Emma would always be its guardian, its protector. As the mountain's dawn broke, the first light of morning creeping through the cracks in the stone, Emma stood. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if she was ready to face it. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. The world was safe for now. And as she walked away from the mountain, the book still clutched tightly in her hands, Emma knew one thing for certain: her journey was just beginning.